video that I'll do on land anyway for tracking your board straight. Move on to some different stuff in the next video, but what I wanted to do today is just do a real quick review of what we've learned to this point, and then tie everything together and give you a few drills that you can use to practice. Between your feet, and that was really important because it set the stage for the skills that we were going to do after that. And so I think what I'll do is I'll just put the chair away. We'll go through them real quick. So the first skill that we talked about was simply getting outside the board with your upper body, getting the paddle blade close to the rail, right? And then pulling straight along the rail to minimize the turning effect that each stroke took. And then we talked about how you could actually go outside the board with your upper body more, to go under the board with your paddle and get even closer to the center line of the board to further reduce the turning effect. And that would be useful for maybe actually bringing the board back to the paddling side. So that was the first skill. That was where we wanted our weight evenly distributed between left and right foot. And then the next skill that we looked at was in video number 3. We looked at weighting the opposite rail. And we established that in a paddleboard with a displacement nose, they behave differently than a skateboard, a snowboard, or a surfboard. On skateboard, snowboard, surfboard, you turn to the rail that you are leaning on, or the edge that you're weighting. But on a paddleboard, it works opposite. So if you want to go to the right, you weight the left rail, and that introduced the need to put weight more on one foot than the other. And I showed you how to do that. Just kind of put more weight on one leg. You can kind of use your hip to do that. Kind of like, you know, standing out with all of your weight on one leg and not much on the other. And then that caused the opposite side rail to drop, lifted the paddling rail, actually exposed the underside of the board, which made it easier to get under the board with your paddle. And so you could combine paddling under the board with weighting the opposite rail, and you could actually turn your board much more powerfully or much more quickly to the paddling side. And then the third skill that we looked at was using the blade face. So remember, that's the blade face. And we talked about opening it up to the board. So if the board edge is right down there on my hand, instead of being perpendicular to the board edge, it's open to the board edge. And that, in essence, draws the nose of the board to the paddle when you enter the water. So you put the blade in, instead of being squared up, a little bit open like that. Just as you gather water, right? I'm just going to actually maybe turn that down just a little bit so that you can see the blade, right? So you turn the blade a little bit so that it's a little bit open to the board, and as you gather water with it, that draws the nose and pulls the nose of the board to the paddle. Okay, so those were the 3 skills. Paddling close to the rail or under the rail, weighting the opposite rail, and then drawing the nose or foot steer or using the blade face. Okay, so those are the 3 skills, and we looked at them in isolation. I talked about how you could use them together, but what I wanted to do today is show you a couple of drills that require you to use all 3 skills together, because that's what you're going to do in reality. Before I do that, I just wanted to say a couple of things. The first is that a couple of people asked me some questions about they're about being able to do it better on one side than the other side, and I wanted to say that that's normal. Um, in my experience, is a little bit skewed because I came from almost over 30 years of paddling in a sprint canoe, where I only paddle on the right side before I started paddling stand-up, which meant I was really good with doing things with the paddle, on the right side, and obviously pathetic on the left because I never paddled left. And so you could understand how when I got on the board, I could do things with my paddle blade to steer my board paddling the right and be very good at it, but on the left, not so good. So, that was for me, and I thought, that's just me because of my background in sprint canoe. But the reality is that that everyone has a side that they're better at and a side that they're weaker at, and I've realized that from observation, from talking to people, and from just thinking about it. Consider this: very, very few people, I probably nobody really that I know of, is completely ambidextrous in left hand, right hand, especially when it comes to something complex like penmanship that requires fine motor control. And when you're talking about using your blade face to control your board, there's a lot of fine motor control in your hands that go into doing that. Not just to control the blade face, but to feel the water that's loaded on the blade. And it's natural that you're going to be better on one side at doing that than you are on the other. And it doesn't have anything to do with strength. It has more to do with coordination and motor control. So just like you have better penmanship with one hand, you have better control of your blade face with the other hand. And it's not even just controlling your blade face for the fine adjustments that are involved in the drawing the nose skill that we talked about in the last video. But even just for balance, even just normal paddling, feeling water loading on your blade, you're going to be better feeling that on one side than the other. And being able to feel that gives you the confidence to put your body weight on the blade, and that gives you more stability. So consider that some of the skills I showed you, particularly paddling close to the rail or under the rail, require you to get outside the board with your upper body and really load on the paddle, and that's tough to do if you don't trust your paddle. If you don't feel like you have really good, won't feel like you have really good balance unless you can trust that paddle. And so it's easy to see how that would be easier for somebody on one side than the other, right? And probably many of you feel like you're better in rough water on one side than the other. You feel more stable on one side than the other. You feel like you brace better on one side than the other. And I think that's natural. And so being able to apply these steering skills that we talked about, and even, with your feet too, you're going to feel more comfortable leaning the board on one side than you are going to be on the other. So applying these skills is going to be a little bit uneven. You're going to be better at it on one side to start with than you are on the other. And so I wanted to tell those people who are asking about this that that's normal. And my advice to you would be as follows. Paddle like you normally do, working on paddling well on both sides. So if you're right dominant like I am, you're going to go and paddle on the right and paddle on the right until it's time to change, and you're going to start to paddle on the left. And I realize that when I'm doing this, I'm looking at myself in the iPad here, and I see that left is right and right is left. It's like looking in the mirror. So don't worry too much about what side I say I'm on. Just go with me here. But if you're paddling on the right and it's time to change to left and paddle on the left, just do that, right? Just paddle like you normally would, and work to do it as well as you possibly can on both sides. But when it comes to being able to master these steering skills that you've been working on, have higher expectations for what you can do on your dominant side, on your stronger side, on the side that you're more coordinated with, your better side. Really have high expectations for yourself on that side. And for the other side, your weaker side, don't worry so much if you don't get it right away. Don't get frustrated if you can track your board straight well on the right, but on the left it's a real work in progress, like you're actually really struggling. Don't worry about that. My advice to you would be get it down on your strong side so that you're actually really good at it. so that you can paddle indefinitely without changing sides and tracking your board straight on that good side, so that you can turn your board to the paddle on your good side, so that you can paddle in a crosswind where everyone else is paddling on the opposite side and you're still able to paddle on that side and make your board run straight. Okay? That means you're really good at tracking your board straight on that side. Once you reach that point, or as you're approaching that point, it becomes easier for you to now start to figure out the other side, and you'll improve on that side more quickly, right? Like as soon as you can get to that point where you're really good at it on your strong side, now you've got the blueprint for it. You are listening to yourself and your own ideas or thoughts about how you think about it or how you apply the skills that I've told you, right? It's no longer are you thinking, oh, Larry said to do this, Larry said to do that, right? You're just listening to yourself. You've got your own blueprint. You've got your own way to do it. You're your own expert. And all you got to do now is mirror what you do so well on your strong side on your weaker side, okay? So that's the approach I'd suggest that you take. It doesn't mean, and I want to clarify this again, it doesn't mean I want you to go out and only paddle on your strong side. I want you to paddle on both sides. You've got to be good at paddling on both sides in stand-up paddling. So you got to work on both sides. But have higher expectations for your strong side. And you will get there to the point where you're good at it more quickly on that good side. And when you get there, it becomes easier now to mirror what you're doing on your strong side and your weaker side. All you got to do is listen to yourself because you know how to do it. And your weaker side will come, okay? So as you're doing that, just have more realistic expectations for your weaker side. Don't be hard on yourself if it's slow progress. It will come. But get it down on your good side first, okay? So that was the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is that with both sides, give yourself time. Paddling is a complex sport. If you think about the motion that is involved, it's a complex movement. There's a lot of moving parts. It requires your whole body, and your whole body. You're standing on a wobbly, thing that you're trying to balance in the water. You're actually using an implement, your paddle, to connect to the water. So you have to feel the water through that implement, and then you have to connect to it and find some bite or purchase against it, and then pull yourself past the paddle that you planted in the water. That's a lot more complex than walking or running, where you have to get some bite or purchase or traction against the ground, right? Because the ground doesn't move, but the water moves everywhere. So you put your blade in and it's moving around. It's hard to find connection. It's a skill just to feel connection, right? So just the motion of paddling through the water is very complex. And like I said, it's taking your whole body. And so there's a lot of moving parts. Add to that now the balance component. Add to that you've got to do it equally well on both sides. And how many sports require you to do that? Golfers don't hit the ball from the left side and the right side. The only sports I can think of where you're required to do things equally well from on both sides is soccer, where a good soccer player, world-class soccer player, is equally good with both feet, right? But most other sports, you're allowed to be one-hand dominant. You don't see tennis players switching hands in the middle of a match. You don't see golfers hitting from either side of the ball. You don't see hockey players, changing which way they shoot, left or right. Occasionally you see switch hitters in baseball, but you don't see pitchers throwing from either side. So it's complex. We ask you to do things equally well on both sides, and then we ask you to do it in really rough water and constantly changing conditions. So it's very complex. And the point of all that is that if it's complex, it's going to take longer to learn. You've all heard of Malcolm Gladwell, who said that you need 10,000 hours to be an expert at something. And I think that's a pretty random number. I always interpret it when I read it as it takes a long time to be expert at something. 10,000 hours is pretty random. But I think it also depends on the complexity of the thing that you're trying to master. So if it's a low-level skill, you should be able to do it in under 10,000 hours. But if it's a really complex thing, it's going to take longer. And some things could take longer than 10,000 hours. To give you an idea, if we were to use 10,000 hours and the fact that I do about 3,500 kilometers a year on average. And if you consider that 10 kilometers in training takes me about 80 minutes, that's about 500 hours a year. And to get my 10,000 hours at 500 hours a year, I'm talking about 20 years to be expert, okay? Now, I don't know about the actual 10,000 hours, but I know it takes a hell of a long time. And so to get back to the steering skills, which is what we're talking about, don't expect to, watch the video, listen to the video, maybe go to the Paddle Monster page and look at the videos where I'm doing these skills on the water, and then get on your board, try it a few times, and suddenly be able to do it. It's not a flick a switch kind of thing. It's going to take time to get this, and time and repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition. And the more you're willing to put into it, the better you will be at it. The purpose of these videos is to give you a roadmap so that you know what direction to go in your day-to-day practice, okay? And obviously, getting back to the discrepancy between your strong side and your weaker side, you're going to learn it more quickly on your stronger side, the side that you're more coordinated with, that you have more control with, than your weaker side, okay? But you can learn it in both. It just takes time. So it's not going to take you 20 years or 10,000 hours, but it's going to take some time. Don't be like those kids that were in my high school phys ed classes where we were doing a skill, say a volleyball serve, and I'd teach the skill, I'd demonstrate the skill, we'd go over the skill, what the step-by-steps were, I'd have them practice, and a kid would do 10 serves and then sit down and say, well, they did it. Like they're expert now. It takes time, okay? So don't be that person that thinks it's going to happen to you automatically. You're not special. It takes all of us, even the most talented athletes, a long time to be really, really good at something, okay? So dig in and enjoy the journey, because being good at anything is a journey, right? And so enjoy that. Don't get frustrated with it, okay? So that was what I wanted to say. So now let's talk about the drills that require you to use all three of these steering skills at once, okay? So the first one I want to show you is the easier of the two drills. I drew it for you here. You can admire my artwork. I'm going to hold it up and we're going to look at it. Okay, it is called the slalom drill. Okay, and so there you can see the paddler, and it looks like the paddler in this case is paddling on the left. I'm seeing that paddler paddling on the left. I thought I drew it on the right, but looks like he's paddling on the left when I look at it in the iPad. Anyway, you'll see the path that this paddler is going to take, right? He starts off running the board to the paddling side, right? So that's going to require him to do what kind of correction to bring it going the opposite way? It's going to require that he paddle out from the board a bit. It's going to require that he weight the rail on the paddling side so that he turns to it increases the turning effect of each stroke to get the board running in the direction that he doesn't really want to go in, which is running to the opposite side, okay? So the idea is that you get your board running to the opposite side, and then what you do is you use your steering skills to correct it and bring it back to the paddling side without changing sides, right? And once you get it coming back to the paddling side, and it's very clearly running to the paddling side, get it going to the opposite side again. Okay, so now it's running away from you again. It's like the turning effect of each stroke is magnified, and that you've lost your steering, right? Then use your steering skills to bring it back to the paddling side again, and just keep doing that. Just keep winding your way down the water course, down the lake, the river, the canal, whatever it is that you're paddling on, for as long as you can. All right. And start small. Start with just get it running away from you a little bit, and then it requires a small correction to bring back. And then just get it running a little bit again, and then a small correction to bring back. As you get better and better at it, you can let the board run away from you a little bit longer and require a bigger correction to bring back. But I would suggest doing it by degrees. Start with small corrections first, and then as you get better at them, increasingly ask yourself, set it up so that you're asked to make bigger corrections. Okay, so let me just show you how that drill would work with my paddle on my imaginary board here. Okay, so you're standing on your board, and the first thing that you want to do is you want to very clearly get it running to the opposite side, because you want a correction to have to make, right? You need to make a correction, so get it running to the opposite side. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to weight the paddling side rail, and I'm going to actually close my blade face to the board instead of open it, and I can actually push water away from my nose to accelerate my turning effect, okay, and get it turning really, really quickly in that direction. Probably only need to do that kind of correction for a stroke or two, because remember, just normal paddling is going to gradually make the board drift to the opposite side. Okay, and again, we're not going to make give ourselves too big a correction to make the first few times we try this. So maybe for you, just normal paddling is going to set it up and have it run to the opposite way. Maybe you don't need to weight the paddling side rail and push the nose to the paddling side. Okay, but anyway, get the board running to the opposite side, and now you've got a correction to make, right? So what are you going to do to bring it back? Well, you're going to weight the opposite rail. You're going to get nice and close to the rail of the board, or even underneath the rail a little bit. You're going to open your blade face, so you draw the nose as you gather water, and you're going to take some strokes like this. And you're going to keep taking strokes like this, especially weighting that opposite rail, being under the rail, opening your paddling blade face, and you're going to gradually bring the board back so that it's running to the paddling side. Okay? When you see that it's very clearly running to the paddling side, and you've made a correction not just to straight, but past straight into the paddling side, then get the board running to the opposite side again. So now is when you probably want to weight the paddling side rail, push the nose as you take a couple of strokes to the opposite side again, and get it running to the opposite side again, because you want to make a second correction. Okay? Once it's very clearly running to towards the opposite shore, weight your opposite rail again, get close to the rail or underneath the rail, open your blade face so you draw the nose, and start taking strokes like that. So you're under the board, you're weighting the opposite rail, you're using the blade face to draw the nose, okay? Continue to take those strokes until you see the board coming back to straight, pass through straight, and start to run towards the paddling side again. And then make another correction that gets the board running to the opposite side again, okay? When it's running to the opposite side, again, one more time, weight the opposite rail, get close to the rail or underneath the board, open your blade face so you're drawing the nose, and take some strokes until you stop the board running to the opposite side. You start to bring it back to straight, and then through straight so it's very clearly running to the paddling side again. And just keep doing that for as long as you can. See if you can do it until you get tired, right? There's no reason you need to stop for steering if you've got lots of room on either side and you're able to do this, and just keep getting it running away from you to the opposite side, bringing it back to the paddling side, getting it running away to the opposite side, bringing it back to the paddling side. If you can keep doing that, that's fantastic, right? And just keep doing it for as long as you can. If you can do it for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're a superstar. Seriously, if you can do that, then you have mastered paddling and tracking the board straight, steering the board towards the paddle on that side, and you should be able to handle crosswinds. When everyone else has to switch to the left, you should be able to stay on the right if you're paddling, if you're doing that on the right. That's how good you'll be, okay, if you can do that for 10 minutes. And again, there's two factors: how long you can do it for, and the size of the corrections you're asking yourself to make, right? If you just get, to start with, don't get the board running way, way, way hard to the other side. Just get the nose running a little bit, and then bring it back. Just get it running a little bit and then bring it back. Just get it running a little bit and then bring it back. Set yourself at the beginning. But as you get better and better at it, let the board run away from you a little bit longer. So remember, I explained this too in a previous video, that the longer you wait, the more momentum the board develops going in that opposite direction. Like it actually starts to accelerate going in the opposite way, like its turning effect. So it's not only you have to make a bigger correction to get it coming straight, but it's developing some momentum in that direction that you got to fight against. So corrections get harder the longer you leave them. But see how long you can leave it as you get better and better at it, and see if you're able to bring it back to straight and then to the other side, okay? So that is the slalom drill, and it's really useful. It's the easier of the two drills, and it's easy if, obviously, if you don't expect yourself to make too big a correction each time, the first few times you're doing it, right? But as you get better at it, challenge yourself, go for bigger corrections. The second one, second steering drill, is harder, and you're going to need a big patch of calm water to do it, a big wide patch of calm water to do it. You're going to start near one shore, and you're going to paddle on the opposite side to the shore side. So if I was on the, I'll show you here. This is the inside circle. So there's my paddler off here in the corner, and see how he's close to the side of the page, right? So that would be like, this is the shore over here, and that paddler is close to the shore. Now notice that the paddle on this paddler is not on the shore side. It's on the water side. And so what the paddler is going to do is, I should have marked an arrow, but the paddler is going to go in this direction around the circle and come back to where he started from, or she started from, paddling only on the inside of that circle. Okay? So it's called an inside circle because you're doing a circle, paddling only on the inside of it. Right? So this would not be a hard drill to do if it was an outside circle. If you were paddling on the opposite side, so if the paddle was on the shore, if you started over on this shore with the paddle on the shore side, it would just be basically, eventually, even if you just paddled and didn't make any steering corrections, if you had a big enough patch of water, eventually you'd do a full circle. If you weighted the paddling side rail and pushed the nose with your paddle at the beginning of every stroke, if you push the nose to the opposite side, you get around that turn pretty quickly. Okay? And it would be no problem. Everyone could do it right now. Everyone could do that. But paddling on the inside only is a lot trickier. Okay? So let's look at how you do that. So inside circle. You're going to have to weight the opposite rail, and you're going to have to weight it pretty hard. The further you can get it down in the water, the better, the more quickly, the tighter you're going to make your inside circle. You know, if you can get it to the point where it's actually at that point of secondary stability, that's amazing. That would be the best place that you could get it to, because you know, if you can get it to that point of secondary stability, it's not going to go any further. So you've got some stability. You know, you can have some confidence that, okay, I feel that secondary stability kick in. It's going to stay there. It's not going to go more. So then you can be comfortable with that extreme tilt to your board, because you know it's not going to go further. That extreme tilt is going to cause your board to turn more quickly. It's going to really expose the underside of your board, which is going to allow you to really get outside the board and get your blade underneath the board every stroke, right? So now you're paddling right along the center line of the board pretty much, because you're so underneath the board, right? Because you're so underneath it. And then you're going to open your blade face. And in this instance, your blade face is going to be open when you catch, and you're probably going to want to leave it open through more of the stroke than you normally do. Remember, in the last video I explained that we like to, when we're drawing the nose, start with the blade open, and once you kind of draw the nose, as you gather water, you straighten it out, and then you pull with the blade square. Well, in this instance, to do an inside circle, I've looked at my blade when I'm doing it. When I'm doing a tight inside circle, my blade stays a little bit open through much of the stroke. Okay? But you got the trickiest part is holding that tilt. holding that weighted opposite rail. It's hard for a lot of people at first. They can weight the rail standing, but as soon as they start to move and try to put some weight in the paddle, right, they take weight off that opposite rail. So the trick is going to be to keep the opposite rail weighted while you're doing this drill, okay? But you're going to basically start to go around in a circle, and you know, eventually, if you're able to do this and you've got a big enough patch of water, you're going to come back right into where you started from. And a couple of things are going to make it easier for you. Obviously, one, big patch of water. Start near the side of that big patch of water, so you've got lots of room. Second thing is no wind, right? Calm water, flat water. You don't want to have a lot of wakes or motorboat washes or things like that, because we're asking you to get to that point of secondary stability. And so if we're getting to that point, stability is going to be a little bit of an issue. And we want you to feel comfortable, because if you feel all jittery and are worried about your balance, you're not going to be able to hold the board lean that you want, and it's unlikely that you're going to be able to get outside the board and, you know, get the paddle blade underneath the board either. You're going to be probably sort of frozen between the rails of your board and being really cautious. So not a lot of wind, because it's going to blow your board around and make it harder for you to control it. Not a lot of rough water, so wind is going to make the water rough too, I guess, create some chop, but not a lot of motorboat wakes or boat traffic or stuff like that. Not a lot of current, because that'll push your board around. So, you know, calm patch of water. Save this drill for those nice days where the lake looks like glass. And again, you know, start and see if you can do your circle. And if it takes you, you know, the entire lake to do your circle, and it takes, you know, 10 minutes to get around the perimeter of the lake doing your circle, the first few times you try it, that's great, you did it. But as you get better and better and better at it, you'll get really good at right up there, getting lots of bite with your blade face, and really drawing the nose as the blade goes in, and then continuing to draw it as you pull your stroke. But you'll really feel like the bite you get when you put your blade in really pulls the nose. And you'll get to a point where you can do it in a pretty tight space. And so that's the inside circle. And both of these drills, the slalom drill and the inside circle, are going to be easier, obviously, to do on your better side. So what I would suggest is not waiting till you're equally good steering on both sides and then trying to do these drills. I would suggest, you know, if you have a side, as you probably will, that you're better on, then push the issue on that side and challenge yourself right from the beginning with the slalom drill, because it's easier, the two drills. Small corrections. As you get better at it, bigger corrections. When you can do fairly big corrections on the slalom drill, try the inside circle. And all of that on your good side, and like seriously start as soon as possible on the slalom drill. When you're able to do that, you know, you can start to think about trying to do like if you're attempting the inside circle on your strong side, you should be doing the slalom drill with small corrections on your weaker side. Okay, but like don't wait for to be good at both sides before you start doing these drills, because doing these drills makes you better quickly. Okay, so if you're pretty good on one side, if you do these drills, if you start with the slalom drill, small corrections, move to bigger corrections, start doing the inside circle, you're quickly going to get much better, because these drills require you to be better, especially the inside circle. So if you're doing the inside circle on your strong side, you should be starting to do the slalom drill with small corrections on your weaker side. And then eventually, if you work at it, you'll get to the point where you can do the inside circle, a tight inside circle on your weaker side as well. But again, it's going to take time. Okay, so this is tracking your board straight. These are the drills that I use to do that. One other drill you can do if you paddle on a windy river. The river that I paddle on is windy, not windy like Chattajack, where each bend is like 5 miles long. I'm talking about bends that are at most 500 meters in length. So it takes like a minute or two to get from one end of the bend to the other. I've in the past just said, okay, I'm going to do a length of the river, which is like 2.5K, paddling only on the one side. And I'm just going to have to negotiate all the bends paddling on that side. And then I'll come downriver paddling on the opposite side. So you can do that kind of thing too, just following the water course, whatever it is, the river that you're on, and only paddling on one side. And then after 10 minutes or something, switching and only paddling on the other side. That's sort of like an organic slalom drill where you just, the terrain or the shoreline is dictating when you're going to use your skills rather than you doing it and on your own time in the slalom drill. Okay, but you got to practice. It's not that hard if you practice, and like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get, and you'll get to a point where you can paddle indefinitely on one side, you can paddle in crosswinds, and at least get some productive paddling done on both sides. And it makes paddling a whole lot more fun. Okay, so I wish you all lots of success with your steering. If you have any questions, please ask. Reach out to me in the comments. I'll try to answer them, and I'll help you out. For the next video, I thought what I'd do is I'd talk a little bit about stability. Kind of goes with a little bit with what we've been talking about here, but I think everyone's going to be getting back in the water soon, hopefully, and there's going to be people are going to be a little rusty maybe because they haven't been on the water. Some of you haven't been on the water for a while, and and then some of us too are going to be paddling where it's windy, like it's spring still, and it's a windy time of year. Some people might be paddling in some wind and some chop and that type of thing. So let's look at stability next. There's some tips that I have that make stability a whole lot easier and allow you to paddle, productively and well in rougher water. So we'll look at that, and then I'll take requests if you want, what you'd like me to talk about next. I know some people want me to talk more about grip. We can talk about gripping the paddle, both top hand and bottom hand. But please send your requests, okay? Because I run out of ideas sometimes, and the ideas I come up with, whether it's for, not so much for videos, because I haven't really done a lot of these before, but for posts that I write, a lot of the times I get, the idea I get for a post comes from a question that somebody asked. And I think about it, I thought, geez, I wouldn't have thought to write about that. But somebody asked a question, it was a good question, and I geek out over an answer for it. So I'd be really happy if people made some requests, okay? I'm actually having fun with this. I hope you guys are enjoying it, and hopefully we're all on the water soon, practicing on the water instead of in our living rooms, okay? Take it easy, everybody, and stay well. I'll see you soon.